kind of do for real. For real.
Cosmic psychedelic funk is what I came to do. Yep. Hi. I'm so by funky. Hey. So by funky. Hi. I'm so by cosmic soul. Hey.
Hey everybody, good afternoon, good morning, or whatever time you're watching the show. We want to welcome you to a new show that we're featuring authors. And I think that is so powerful because each of us have a story, but to have access to a platform where you can share the story, that's going to be something new, and we are very excited about it. We call the show the Authors Authority Lounge. My name is Alan T. Black. I'm one of the co-hosts here, along with the fabulous Takara Nicole, and of course, our other co-host who will be here after the next show, Miss Nicole Lewis. So we want to welcome you to the program today. We're going to switch up things today, because actually, instead of being one of the co-hosts, I get to be interviewed because I'm an author as well. So at this point, I'm going to throw it over to the fabulous one, Miss TC herself.
What's going on, everybody? We're super excited that you're here. Like Alan T. Black said, this is a show specifically for authors. And if you know an author, they are a powerhouse. So you're gonna know a little more about us today. I'm super excited. So just bear with me, fumbling over my words. It's pure excitement because, like Alan said, we actually have our own platform. And for those of you who are in the arts and media space, you know how important it is. So I am going to interview Alan a little bit. So when I first met this gentleman, I instantly was gravitated towards him for his wealth of knowledge and just what he does in the authorship space. It's amazing. And so you guys are getting ready to learn so much more about the one and only Alan T. Black. So thank you so much for being my co-host, mentor, friend, business partner, all of the above. We share the authorship space together. I appreciate you. So let's get into it. Tell us a little bit about Alan T. Black, the author. Let's go.
Wow, that is a very layered question to Carl, because when I look back over this journey, and I'm starting to realize now as I'm looking back, the authorship side, as far as being a published author for writing, began in essence in 2015. But I realize now there's a prelude to that, just because of my side, which draws back to the music. My original writing authorship is as a lyricist. And so I'm the guy that creates the story that you hear in a song, because lyrics are powerful. They speak to us in so many different ways and everything. And from the time I was a kid, I've always been attracted to the story that you hear in a song. And I've also found out as I've gotten older, the power of lyrics are such that you can hear the first 3 or 4 notes of a song from 40 or 50 years ago. And within about 3 or 4 beats, the lyrics start popping back in.
For sure.
I think about in 1963, 64, somewhere there, the Temptations came out with a song. Which one was it? I can't remember it now anyway, but my mind just went blank. But anyway, My Girl, I'm sorry, My Girl, mine went blank, I apologize, audience, but I think about My Girl, which was sometime in 64, maybe no later than 65. But when you hear those first 3 or 4 notes, those lyrics start coming back to you.
They sure do.
And so that was my fascination as a child, to hear the story that was in the music. So I'm looking now that as I was growing up, my father was a big music person. He was that guy, he had albums everywhere. Because this is back in the dark ages before CDs and MP3s and things of that nature. So
we had 8 tracks.
You had, no, this predates 8 tracks. We're going back
to the album.
We're going back to the albums in the 60s.
Yeah.
Okay?
We had a bunch of those growing up in my house. I absolutely loved them.
So we're going back to those in the 60s.
And don't you dare scratch one. Ooh. you in trouble.
You in deep trouble. And so my father just played music constantly. Most of it was jazz oriented. A lot of it got to be some R&B from the Motown era, from Aretha, from James Brown, people like that. But I was always drawn to that story that you hear in there. And so I can remember now just hearing that and internalizing it. And so when I got to high school, I really began to just write a little bit here and a little bit there. And it's amazing when each of us look back over the course of our lives, there are certain events which are going to spark something,
Yes.
but you may not know it at the time,
Yes.
but it's sparking something in you for a reason.
For sure.
Not necessarily for then, but maybe for later on. Saying that to say this, I can recall as a high school senior, we had an English lit class, and I had to turn in a paper for something. I can't remember what it was, but anyway, I turned in the paper, and I thought, this is not going to be any good. I thought basically I'd get maybe a C or a D on the paper. And to my other shock, I actually got an A on it.
Wow.
And the teacher called me in after class. He said, Alan, you've got some talent here. You need to do something with it. I'm 17 years old. I'm thoroughly shocked because I'm just like, my whole goal was just get this paper out of here and I can go on with my life.
Right.
But he was telling me that I had some talent. And so I remember that, and then I went on to college. And in college is where I really got started writing lyrics for songs. And a second confirmation came because one of my professors, who was actually like my mentor, I remember I wrote some lyrics for a potential song. I don't do the music, but I can hear the story in my mind. So I created the story. I took it to him just to have him look it over and see what he thought. I was scared to death.
Oh, no.
And I was scared because I didn't know how he was going to respond.
Right.
Now, if he had said, you're wasting your time, I wouldn't have gone any further.
Right.
But he read it. He said, you know, Alan, you got something here. I was only 20 at the time. This was about 1975, so that goes way back to the dark ages for some people.
Oh, stop.
But saying that to say this, he lit a fire under me. And it's important that when we are doing something, if it's writing, if it's music, whatever it may be, never lose sight of the fact that somebody can say something to you at a particular time. And that can be something you can build on and you can grow up through and improve yourself. So I continued after he encouraged me, and during the 80s, I reconnected with one of my college friends who's become one of my best friends, Dr. Franklin Thompson here in Omaha. He had a recording studio. So he graciously gave me the opportunity to come in and work with him in the studio.
Oh, wow.
And start collaborating on music at that time, which was essentially gospel.
Okay.
And then we eventually started transitioning into soul and R&B.
Okay.
And so it gave me the opportunity to really develop that craft as far as a lyricist in R&B and gospel.
Right.
But when you start writing and something is ignited inside you,
Yep. Talk about it.
you never really know where it's going to go. Because lyrically, I began to think about other genres. I had done something in gospel. I had done something in R&B. I began to expand and look at something like in pop music, which I did a couple times. I expanded into like Christian rock.
Oh, cool.
I did that. And then I even took it to another level where I've collaborated, I've created a couple of songs in country.
Yes.
Now, people have said, okay, where does the country thing come from? And what I have to explain to them as a writer, particularly as a lyricist, and again, this is the musical side of Alan, is that when I create a storyline, particularly for music, I don't hear the music, but then in terms of the storyline that I create,
Okay.
I have to step back and then say, based on this storyline, what is the genre of music that's going to express it the best way?
Oh.
Is it R&B? Is it pop? Is it country?
Yeah.
So in this case, it actually wound up being country. So I'm very pleased with that. It was outside the box. But as a writer, if it's lyrically, if you're writing as a novelist or whatever the case may be, your aspiration should be to go beyond what you consider the norm so that you continue to expand your horizon and
For
you
sure.
continue to grow and to stretch yourself as much as possible.
Yeah.
So I've done that in country. This past year or so, I went a totally different direction because I always had an idea for a Christmas song. And so I said, you know what? I want to do something for a Christmas song. And so I was blessed to be able to write the lyrics for a Christmas song called Christmas Is, which is really a reflection of what Christmas is supposed to be about. What does it mean to us and what's really the important thing with Christmas?
That's powerful.
And so this was more in the vein of a kind of a sacred type of feel to it, kind of along the lines of a group called Pentatonics, who has kind of a sacred kind of choral type of feel to it. And so I did that. And the great thing now about technology, as you know, is the fact that the opportunities to collaborate
Yes.
are not just necessarily local. Those are great. But because of technology, now you can collaborate on projects in a region. You can now collaborate on projects globally. So for this particular song, Christmas Is, I wrote the lyrics. I worked with some musicians who are in Argentina. They did the music. We put the song together. Then I reached out through Fiverr with a guy who's in Spain who did the video. And so we debuted it, I think it was December 17th of 2022. And it actually wound up getting about 1,000 people to look at it. And so I was very pleased with that, and I continue to do things lyrically as a writer. But it's a funny thing because we have one idea of what we think we're going to do as a writer. Takara, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's where you're going to stay.
For sure.
Because in 2015, what happened was God began to move me in a whole nother direction away from my music side, and he began to move me into the realm of becoming a Christian author. And I'll share with the audience in all candor that becoming a Christian author was not something I planned to do.
Tell me about it.
That was not on my schedule.
Not on the list.
No, it wasn't even at the bottom of the list.
Okay.
It wasn't even there.
Didn't make the list. Right.
So I remember in 2015, I was still working because I retired from my job at the university here, just working part-time doing hotel renovations just to kind of keep my mind engaged. So I'm on Central Standard Time here in Nebraska, so from 6 in the morning till 8, nothing really to do. It's kind of slow. Okay. So I'm not that guy who plays games on his phone or goes online and just reads stuff just to be reading it. That's not who I am. That creative gene in me does not allow that. So I actually just started kind of freestyling, just kind of writing some different thoughts.
Oh, wow. Really?
And just kind of start writing things that the Lord put in my mind to just write and to basically type on the in a Word document. And this started happening in late 2015, and it scared me because I would get up after I'd written something, I would go get some water, I would come back, and I couldn't remember what I'd written.
Oh, wow.
And that happened twice. And the second time it happened, it really scared me.
Right.
Because I remember I called a friend of mine who's a pastor, and I said, well, what's going on here? Because this isn't who I am. My background, because of my profession at the university of education, structured, analytical, A, B, C, D, that kind of thing.
Right.
So this was a whole new territory for me.
Exactly.
It's taking me completely out of the norm. And so he said, well, will you be obedient to what God's calling you to do?
Ooh-wee.
Now, he asked the question.
Yeah. Powerful one.
And I said, I don't know about that. And I said it that way because, to be totally honest with you and being transparent, this isn't what I had planned.
Right.
It wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do.
Right.
And it was uncomfortable because I'm doing something that's not in my wheelhouse, let's just say.
Exactly. For sure.
So I said, okay, I'll try.
Yeah.
I was lukewarm, I admit, because this was something new. I think it's important to keep in mind that anything that we're trying brand new, which may take us out of our comfort zone,
For sure.
is going to be kind of scary in a lot of ways because you're going into something new that you have no experience with as
Right.
such. So I actually began to just accumulate writings throughout 2015, and I'll never forget, I shared a couple of my short essays, which is what they really are, with one of my former students. And she said, well, why don't you write for a blog?
Yes.
And I said, what's a blog? Because I started this journey as a Christian author at the age of 60. So I'm technology's challenged in a lot of ways because I come from a whole different era. So she was talking about writing for a blog. I said, I don't know what a blog is.
Yeah.
So I went home, I looked it up on Google, and I said, oh, this is what it is. So I sent off some of my essays to some blogs that said no,
Of course.
which I expected. But then the very last one I sent to a blog in Singapore called Christian Blessings. And to my other shock, the editor emailed me back and she said, I want you to write for me. I was scared to death because I was like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Well, first of all, I barely know what a blog is.
Right.
And secondly, I honestly don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
I'm just kind of walking this faith walk, and I'm not sure what's happening where I'm going. So she issued me a challenge, I'll never forget, for January 2016. And she said, I need you to write something which is going to be an intro or an opening for the beginning of a new year, which was 2016.
Oh, wow.
I thought. I didn't come up with anything until December 27th.
Ain't that something?
But this is the miracle of how you can be connected from the past to the present. I was coming home, and I heard a song called Old Lang Syne. Part of the lyrics in there, again, that's coming back to my lyrical side, it talks about, will old acquaintances be forgotten? And it hit me. That would be a perfect time to begin the year. And so that's one of my chapters in my first book, Here I Am, Lord. And what old acquaintances is about is when we come into the beginning of a new year or at the start of a new journey in our life, what are the old acquaintances that we need to rid ourselves of?
Yeah.
Is it fear?
Yeah.
Is it your anxiety?
Is it a person?
Is it a person? Whatever it may be.
Can be.
But will you rid yourself of those old acquaintances in order for you to move forward to really do what it is you need to do?
That's tough.
That's tough.
Yeah.
So I did that. I wound up writing for Christian Blessings in Singapore for 5 years.
Wow.
And then that led to me doing my first book called Here I Am, Lord, which came out in the summer of 2017. I'm 62 at this point. And I'll never forget, leading into this process, I reached out to a gentleman locally here in Omaha. I was asking him about what it's like to be an author, and it was the worst conversation I ever had in my life.
Oh, no.
It was
Negative Nancy
negative.
or negative
It
Nathan?
was discouraging. It was like there's no hope.
And that's one of the prime examples of why we have to be very careful on who we
Yes,
ask
we do.
when we've been designated to walk in a certain lane that God has created for us, because everyone's not going to have the answer that we want to hear.
That's so true. After 20 minutes of listening to this gentleman, I thanked him for the conversation. I hung up the phone. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to receive that. Because if I got to the point where I have enough material for a book, it has to be for a reason. So saying that to say this, whatever journey you're on, you're going to have the negative Nancys or the
Yes.
Doug Downers or whatever the case may be. But they're there for a reason because they're going to test your resolve
Yes.
and they're going to test your faith as to what it is you're really being called to do.
For sure.
So in my case, I had to brush it off and I had to say, I'm going to do what I know I can do.
Yeah.
I released the first book in 2017, Here I Am, Lord. It was surreal. And I say that because, as I mentioned before, I never saw myself as an author.
Right.
I was being called to operate outside my normal sphere.
Yeah.
And to see the book when it appeared on Amazon, it was surreal because I remember, Takara, I just sat there and looked at the book for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I was totally in disbelief like it had really happened.
Exactly. It happens all the time.
And I remember friends calling me and they were saying, wow, man, you're going to do a book signing? We got to get your autograph. And I was like, what's a book signing? I mean, I had no idea because this is totally new to me. So
Right.
what I have learned from this is that when you go on a journey, you can, in a lot of respects, expect the unexpected because you just don't know where it's going to wind up leading
You just have
you
no
to.
clue.
And that's been the great thing about this journey is the fact that it's led me into different arenas that I never anticipated.
For sure.
I've been blessed to do 3 books now. The second book, In the Spirit Intended, actually, I was recognized as the best-selling author on Amazon in July of 2019, which is an amazing accomplishment. Not that I did anything, but to be blessed to be able to do that.
Yes.
And so I share with everybody my story because if I can start at 60 years old with little to no experience and not having a clue what I'm doing,
Anybody can start.
anybody can start.
Yes.
And now with technology and the opportunity to use the internet, to use social media,
For sure.
there are so many different outlets that are there to assist you in this process.
Yeah.
And so that is about as much as anything, what are you going to do to get you from A to Z? But keeping in mind that you don't have to do it by yourself.
That's right.
It's
right.
about, I'm very big on the C word, which for me is collaboration. Because you reach out, you connect with somebody who can do certain things that you cannot do.
Right.
I can write.
Right.
I don't know anything about formatting or editing, but that's not my strength.
And that's okay.
But I plug in with people such as yourself. That's what you do.
Exactly.
And so it becomes a team effort, a process of collaboration
Yeah.
that gets you from A to Z to get you completed.
And that's huge. I mean, it's huge that you have that collaboration because you will stress yourself out trying to do everything yourself.
Yes.
And Myron Golden is amazing. And he talks about trading money for time, time for money.
Yes.
And so sometimes you just have to seek out what you don't know, and it's totally fine, but it's important. So we got about 4 minutes left. If you can read a portion of one of your books there, which one
I'm
do you wanna
going to read a couple of paragraphs from my second book, In the Spirit Intended. Now, it's difficult to go in because my books are about 33, 34 chapters. And my chapters are like 2 or 3 pages long.
Yeah, powerful though.
So it just gets right to the point and leaves you with something to think about. But one of the favorite chapters from book number 2 is called A Square Peg. Now, this is what this means. This is a square peg. I have to admit, in looking over the course of my life, I have been that square peg. Truth be told, on many an occasion, I have tried to fit in. At times I was successful, and at other times I came up a little bit short. But even during those times when I thought I was being successful, fitting in, being that square peg, fitting in a round hole, in truth, was at best nothing more than an illusion.
Wow.
How often has each of us in our lives found ourselves trying to fit in, insisting that at times, in spite of the fact that we were a square peg, we would still try to make it a point to even force ourselves to fit into
That's so good.
that round hole.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying in this particular chapter to Cara and everybody is we're not being called to fit in.
No,
We're being called to stand out.
for sure.
And so if God has a purpose for you,
Yes.
recognize that it's okay for you to be a square peg because you're not being called to fit in, you're being called to stand out.
That's so good.
And so that doesn't just pertain to your walk as a Christian, but your overall life, because each of us have been at the position where we tried to fit in, but it didn't feel right.
Right. For sure.
Something's not right, something's off.
Yep.
But then you come to an awakening, hopefully, an epiphany where you say, this is not who I'm supposed to be. I've been trying to fit in, and that's not what it's all about.
That's important.
You're beginning to find what your purpose is
Yes.
and what your passion is.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's what you really begin to pursue. It becomes the intangibles. What is it all about? What is my real purpose?
Yeah.
What is my passion?
Right.
What keeps me moving even when I don't feel like
For sure.
doing so?
Yeah.
And so for me, writing has become that particular component. I've gone on to do a third book called Just a Closer Walk. And that's basically talking about the journey that I continue to be on as a Christian. And so for me, writing is self-revelatory. It is reflective in a lot of ways. When people are reading my books, they see themselves in there as far as, hey, that sounds like me in some ways.
That's so powerful.
And so I think it's important that what we look at when we are writing is the fact that each of us have a story. And we have a story that, if nothing else, don't always keep it to yourself. I'm in a period now where it's about legacy.
Yes.
My third book, Just a Closer Walk, I'm going to start working on an audiobook. And the audiobook is going to be for the purpose of leaving it for the children in my life. So that after I'm gone, part of my legacy still remains. They'll hear my voice.
Yes.
They'll be able to think back to what it was I was trying to teach them.
Right.
And so I'm encouraging people to look at what is your legacy that you're leaving behind. And with technology now, as you know, it's there. We can do so many different things with technology and do our writing as well.
Yeah, you said a whole lot. So hopefully you guys were taking notes, copious notes at that. Go ahead and tell people where they can reach you at.
They can reach me at my website, alantblack.com. It's ALANTBLACK.com. And woo, I even got Instagram, y'all. At 69 years old, I got Instagram, which is AlanTBlack55. But hey, y'all, if I can do it, didn't have a clue starting at 60 and now 69, everybody can do it. To whom much is given, much is required.
And that has been a show. Thank you so much, Alan T. Black, talking about authorship in the form of his story, his journey, all things being that lyricist. So what's next? You guys got to tune in for the next episode of the Authors Authority Lounge, the official TV show for authors. Until then, see you later. Have a good one.
What you trying to do for real? For real.
Cosmic, psychedelic, funk